Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is David Jenyns. David's entrepreneurial journey began in his 20s when he sold Australia's most beloved sporting venue, the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Since then, his business experience has spanned from franchising retail clothing stores to founding one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, Melbourne SEO Services. In 2016, he successfully systematized himself out of that business, hired a CEO, and stepped back from the daily operations. Through this process, he became a systems devotee, founding SYSTEMology. Today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of running their business. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, David.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Ed.
Well, first off, David, why do you do what you do?
I became passionate about helping business owners get out of their operations. Shortly after I did it for my digital agency, I took a little bit of time off, and it's funny how in business you just kind of fall into something and you just start doing something because it's in the moment. And I find very rarely do a lot of business owners stop, create enough space to think, what do I want to do? And that's what happened to me when I stepped out of the digital agency. The passion for the digital agency had died. And then I thought, I want to help business owners step out of, doing the daily grind and start to work on it rather than in it, like Michael Gerber talks about.
Well, sure. And to that end, let me ask you this. How do you get started in documenting systems? Where do you even identify what they are?
Yes. Well, that's probably the most common question because I think every business owner I chat with, we're always sold on the idea of business systems. Like you read the E-Myth and Built to Sell, Work the System, Traction, Scaling Up, all of those books, they all talk about business systems, but then it's like, yeah, where do I get started? And that's a big reason I wrote my book, Systemology, was to answer that very first question. And there's a very simple exercise. I mean, you can literally just get out an A4 bit of paper and scribble this down now, and it'll make it very clear for the person listening how to do this. You start off in the top left-hand corner and you write down your dream client. So the person who pays your advertised prices, who's a pleasure to work with, refers friends and family, and just that dream client that you would like to attract more of into your business. Then underneath that, you write down what is the first product or service that you would sell to that dream client. It's the product that you get good margin for. It's the gateway into the rest of your product line, something that would get them started. And you use both of those as an anchor point just to remember who is the dream client, what is that primary product or service. And then on the A4 bit of paper, working from the top down, we describe both the customer journey and the business's journey to deliver that product or service. So we start off thinking, how do we grab the attention of the target audience? And then moving down, how do we handle the incoming inquiry when that person comes from, social media or Google or however you got their attention? Then after that, what does the sales process look like? Do you hop on a Zoom and how do you qualify them? And after that Zoom call, just keep on moving down the page. And these are just almost like little boxes. And in each box, you don't write more than 2 or 3 words. And you also only focus on what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. And you continue down the exercise and you think, right, well, after I send out an invoice, how do I onboard them? And how do I deliver that core product or service? And then finally, how do I hand it over and repeat or upsell or introduce them to other products? Now, if you do that at a high level and it's literally what are you currently doing and it's that journey and you only do 2 or 3 words, like it's not more than a 10-minute exercise, but the takeaway is you've now identified the way the business makes money. And if you can systemize that, you're well and truly on your way.
It's funny you should mention this. I taught a class, or I still do occasionally, on consulting theory and practice, and one of the sections of the course is business process documentation. And the key warning that I always stress there is that when you're documenting someone's business practice, never try to solve any of their problems while you're doing it, because you will end up in this infinite loop of never documenting the business practice, right?
That is something, it is so common, and it's it's what everybody falls into, this trap. And it's then compounded because they think, what's the first business, or what are some businesses that come to mind when you think about a systemized business? You think of McDonald's, that pops into your mind, and then people think, oh, I need to systemize like McDonald's. And then they start to think, oh, I've got to have these very detailed processes for every aspect of the business, and it's got to be optimized to the nth degree. And I always go, no, don't systemize like McDonald's is today. I mean, they've been doing this for 60 years. Think about how they got started 60 years ago. Start where you are, capture what you're currently doing, make that your baseline, find best practice that already exists, because there's a chance there are team members doing things a certain way and not everybody's doing it that way. So let's just capture what you're currently doing and bring everybody up to that level. Get your baseline down, get some dashboards, start to collect some metrics. Then when you start to change, that's what happens afterwards. But the metrics, and it's very hard to do improvement if you can't measure, if you're not doing things consistently.
And you bring up another good point, which is that the concept that if you can be focused on it and not necessarily know what the business is. Let me give you an example that has just come up recently here in the States. We're struggling like the rest of the world in vaccine distribution. And I actually made a joke a couple of weeks ago that one of the people that we should put in charge of vaccine distribution here in the States is a chicken franchise called Chick-fil-A, because
Yes.
they are absolute masters in getting people through lines. That's what they do. I mean, yes, they make chicken, but they also get people through lines. Well, lo and behold, it turns out that in South Carolina last weekend, the mayor was struggling with getting people through the vaccine line, and guess who he called? The manager of the local Chick-fil-A. the the point being here, and this is what you were saying, is you don't have to necessarily be an expert in business process documentation to do this. You just have to have the willingness to separate yourself a little bit from what it is that you're doing. Comment on that a little bit.
100%. 100%. I think the real key here is it's actually about changing culture inside the company to get the team to think about, hey, we have a way of doing things. We're looking for constant improvement. It's not going to start as perfect, and you're never going to reach perfect, but you kind of just keep inching forward. And I mean, that ends up being a shortcut. Exactly what you mentioned with the Chick-fil-A stuff is oftentimes a lot of the problems that you might have in business, they've already been solved elsewhere. So once you do get your base set of systems down and you get to that problem solving moment, then yes, you go seek out, well, who's doing this really well? You copy that and replace that part of your business system, and then you can start to tweak it and adjust it and make it your own. But it becomes almost like a little bit of a game once you get going and you create this culture in your business. At first, it's a game of whack-a-mole, because you're seeing a problem, you're trying to fix it with a system or a process, change the way that you're doing. And that happens quite a lot at the start. But then over time, less and less of those problems start popping up, and it creates space for the business owner then to solve higher quality problems. So it's a funny thing though, because oftentimes for the business owner, they're not naturally wired to do this. Most business owners, they're these big visionary thinkers, and they don't think about systems and process. So I also try and teach a way to make it simple. It might just be recording a video on your iPhone. It could be using a Loom or a Zoom. Just record whatever it is getting done, no matter how rough and raw it is. And then the real secret is to then give it to someone else to do the documentation. That's the key. Documentation is a two-person job. There's a knowledgeable worker, and then there's the documenter. And that just makes everything infinitely easier.
Yeah, it's like writer and editor. You need that two separate functions to be there. Well, David, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn. Many moons ago, when I was just getting started in business, I started learning all of his quotes, things like work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Never wish that life were easier, wish that you were better. And you get paid for the value that you bring to the marketplace. And a lot of those kind of ideas just, really became core anchors for me in business.
All right. And lastly, David, how can somebody contact you?
yeah, best place, just head over to systemology.com/book. Systemology.com/book. And there's a link. I've got this 7-step process: Systemology, create time, reduce errors and scale your profits with proven business systems. Or you just head over to Amazon and search for Systemology.
All right, David Jenyns, founder of Systemology and author of the book by the same title. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.